How old were you when you first went over this?
If it was 2 years ago, I was 16.
When you first went to give a massage, it was just a massage?
Just a massage.
As you continued to go, did it escalate more?
It escalated whenever he wanted. I said no for a very long time. I wouldn't let him put anything inside of me, and then one day he just did. So I didn't know what to think, and I, feel like, I don't know how to, I'm sorry.
Take a deep breath. I can see it in your eyes already.
Jeffrey's gonna get me. You guys realize that, right? He's gonna figure this out, and I'm not safe now. You understand that, right? I'm not safe.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein is dead.
It's the most twisted story of the decade.
Jeffrey Epstein's a pedophile billionaire.
A billionaire who has mysterious connections to the most powerful people in the world.
Prince Andrew, Donald Trump, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton.
This guy, he could get away with anything.
In this 3-part special, our exclusive interviews explore crucial questions.
I am a cousin of Prince Andrew. I saw Jeffrey and Ghislaine every single day.
I am the first person who reported Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein had asked me to take over the defense of his criminal case.
I suicide-watched Jeffrey Epstein.
Who helped him commit these crimes?
Ghislaine told me proudly, I help him out by bringing in the females.
Epstein created a sex trafficking network in which his employees would recruit girls.
Every co-conspirator needs to be behind bars.
What horrors did the victims experience?
The charges allege that Epstein sexually abused young girls.
I saw a lot of children coming in, little girls.
There is sadness, there is anger, there's scars that will never heal, ever.
So many people as a boy was about 16, 17. All the girls were topless.
The scale of what he did is almost too much for the human mind to take in.
How did he get away with it for decades?
The feds negotiated such a sweetheart deal.
They allowed Epstein to continue to prey on women.
Just a travesty of justice like people could not imagine.
And finally, who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
I definitely think he was murdered.
I'm convinced he killed himself. Case closed for me.
I don't believe he took his own life.
One can only guess what secrets he took to the grave.
The MCC, or the Metropolitan Correctional Center, is on the corner of Pearl Street and Park Row, which is located in Lower Manhattan. It's close to the epicenter of the financial industry, Wall Street. You would never know it's a jail. It's almost like a forgotten world. They house some of the most notorious criminals in the world.
On the morning of August 10th, 2019, the guards at the MCC were starting to deliver the breakfasts to all of the prisoners who were on the 9th floor.
And this particular unit was called the SHU, where they house all of the high-profile inmates.
The SHU, the Special Housing Unit, which is a really nasty place to be because it's cold, it's noisy. There were mice everywhere and big water bugs.
The guards approach the cell housing inmate number 763-18054. And they peer through the window. And what they see is nothing short of terrible. There's an inmate on his knees, motionless, and it appears that he's got a cloth noose tied around his neck. The man is none other than Jeffrey Epstein, 66-year-old financier and accused serial child molester. So they rush in and they got him loose.
They were really freaking out because they knew they up.
Mr. Epstein was non-responsive, and at that point, there's a radio call that goes out, an emergency alarm goes off. There's a medical response team to Mr. Epstein's cell. They immediately remove him from the cell and take him directly to the hospital.
Doctors raced to save the life of the financier, who had been arrested just a month earlier by the New York Police Department and the FBI. On the day of the arrest, investigators serve a search warrant on Epstein's Upper East Side mansion.
9 East 71st Street is an extremely extravagant townhome. It's a massive place, one of the biggest in New York, valued at $77 million. It overlooks the Frick collection of art. Less than 45 seconds and you can be in Central Park. It has some very tall, 15 feet high oak doors, very thick. And the NYPD has a battering ram. They batter open those doors so they can effectuate a search warrant on those premises. Inside, they come across disgusting kind of things. They find troves of pictures of underage girls and nude pictures and possibly pictures with prominent people on them. They also find diamonds. If you're going to escape a country or you want to launder money, diamonds are your best friend. And they crack open a safe, and inside the safe they find a passport with his picture and a different name. It's actually an Austrian passport. So there's a lot of evidence there.
We announce the unsealing of sex trafficking charges against Jeffrey Epstein. The charges allege that Epstein sexually abused young girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts for money. The alleged behavior shocks the conscience.
The bombshell news of the billionaire's arrest reverberates across the globe.
Prosecutors say Epstein created a sex trafficking network in which his employees and associates would recruit girls as young as 14.
A billionaire once connected with some of the most powerful figures in the world arrested.
Big name people, famous people. Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, major leaders of Wall Street, Prince Andrew. They all knew Jeffrey Epstein.
He's not socializing at the local bowling alley. He's going to private multimillionaire parties with a very select group of individuals. You're talking about homes that have 15 to 18 foot high ficus hedges that you can't see behind. He attended events at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump.
While Epstein lacks the renown of his famous friends, he seems to outclass many in wealth.
His homes were magnificent, quite striking on the size and the presence at 71st Street. Remarkable place. And then Jeffrey Epstein acquired an estate in Florida, in North Palm Beach, that was also a beautiful home. And he acquired an apartment in Paris, France, a ranch in New Mexico, and 2 islands near St. Thomas. The richest of the richest lifestyle one could imagine.
He was sort of like a reclusive, apparent financial and tax consultant to a boutique retinue of extremely wealthy families. He says, I only take clients with $1 billion or more in net worth. That was part of his power, was his mystique.
Epstein was very mysterious. He was an enigma of sorts. He was clever and smart, good with numbers, but most of the pretty substantial Wall Street investors never knew who he was.
So there's a lot of murkiness around where Epstein made all his money. Nobody really knows. Is it possible that he had something on a collection of the super rich and that maybe he was actually benefiting from it, holding it over them in some way?
The 2019 arrest is not the first time Epstein has faced legal trouble. More than a decade prior, from 2005 to 2007, he is the subject of a multi-agency sex trafficking and sexual assault investigation in Florida.
I'm Spencer Kuven. I'm an attorney practicing in Palm Beach County. I represented a number of victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Back in 2007, the Palm Beach Police Department knew of at least 40 girls that he had abused. Some as young as 14, but it was probably in the hundreds. They felt they had enough evidence to charge him with multiple sex crimes against minors.
After building their case, Palm Beach police handed over to the FBI, believing the charges could mean a life sentence.
I'm John Connolly. I was investigative reporter for Vanity Fair magazine for a number of years. And in 2005, I started investigating Jeffrey Epstein. Then, in 2016, I co-wrote a book with James Patterson, which hopefully exposed him a lot more than he had been previously. In 2007, the FBI had a 53-page indictment, but then he had some of the best lawyers in the country. And then all of a sudden it disappears. Jeffrey agrees to a plea deal.
At the time, nobody really knew the details of this plea agreement his hotshot lawyers had cooked up. Dozens of young women and girls had been fully cooperating with police, yet there was Jeffrey Epstein seeming to dodge the bullet.
They give him, I think, 18 months, but he only had to do 13 of it. I don't know why, but they allowed him to get away with it. This was just a travesty of justice like people could not imagine. Hard to believe it's America. It really is.
Now, the 2019 arrest might finally mean justice for the victims who are furious at the way he dodged the 2007 charges.
So Epstein walks into a Manhattan federal courtroom and he pleads not guilty. And his lawyers argue that that Florida plea agreement is airtight, and therefore he can't be charged. And now all of a sudden, all of his victims are starting to worry, is this guy actually gonna walk again?
But just a month into his jail stay at MCC, he's found with a noose around his neck, barely clinging to life.
They take him to a hospital, the New York Presbyterian Hospital downtown, where he's being wheeled out in a gurney with his hands cuffed and a ventilator mask across his face. But soon after, he is pronounced dead.
He should have been safe there, but he wasn't. Did he commit suicide? Was he murdered? To be determined.
News of Jeffrey Epstein's death creates a media firestorm.
We begin with breaking news, a devastating turn of events for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender dead tonight after apparently taking his own life.
The death of a billionaire in a correctional facility brings a lot of heat. And in particular, we're talking about a billionaire who has mysterious connections to the current president, to the royal throne in London, as well as to numerous strong and powerful businessmen throughout the world. Multiple investigations were opened to find out how and why Mr. Epstein died.
As Epstein's body is prepared for autopsy, authorities investigate his final days, beginning on July 23rd.
Just maybe 3 weeks before Mr. Epstein's death, there was a previous incident where it is alleged that he attempted suicide, and then he was put on a suicide watch.
I'm Bill Mercy. I spent a year at MCC Federal Prison for tax fraud, and I made the money with escorts. During that time, I had Paul Manafort as a bunkie, and I suicide watched Jeffrey Epstein. First meeting was, I said, Jeff, I'm here for tax fraud, for running an escort agency, and I got my own money. I don't need any of yours. You don't have to worry about that. You know, the fact that I'd been in the sex business was, of course, to his liking. A lot of talk about how to deal with prison. Those were the main topics. There was nothing particularly remarkable about him, to me, at all. He was just, a regular guy in my demographic sitting in a suicide cell, and he didn't strike me as depressed.
After just 1 week, MCC personnel decide Epstein is not a threat to himself.
After being evaluated by particular medical staff, he's taken off suicide watch and placed back in the secure housing unit with a cellmate. He was supposed to always have a cellmate to make sure that if he did attempt to commit suicide, there would be someone there to ring the alarm. But on the day before he died, the inmate that was assigned to his cell was released. And apparently the administration then failed to assign him another roommate.
As an inmate who had been on a suicide watch recently, Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to be visually checked by guards every 30 minutes. But as the investigation into what happened the night he died progressed, it became increasingly clear that didn't happen.
And they find that the prison guards are surfing the internet and shopping, and they fall asleep when they're supposed to be watching Epstein. They don't do their round-the-clock check-ins.
They're supposed to go around at designated intervals, and they just didn't.
As investigators collect more information about that night, they discover that even more protocols had mysteriously failed.
There were 2 cameras outside of Jeffrey's cell, but when the investigators went to review them, they'd somehow malfunctioned. How did this happen? How on earth could this happen?
On the night Jeffrey Epstein died, he didn't have a cellmate, the guards didn't check on him, and the cameras happened to fail.
It's almost like a perfect storm of incompetence and failed equipment.
I mean, you put all of these things together, and it certainly seems it was an awfully convenient time for Jeffrey Epstein either to kill himself or Jeffrey Epstein to be murdered.
Everything seems to go wrong. It's very suspicious. So Jeffrey Epstein's death becomes fodder for conspiracy theories galore.
I'm David Schoen, and I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Before he died, Jeffrey Epstein had asked me to take over the defense of his criminal case. I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories, but my anecdotal information, that is my meetings with him, the mood he was in, he was upbeat, planning to fight the case, clear his name. Nobody can say that there's absolutely no basis for these conspiracy theories and stuff, so I don't believe he took his own life.
Maybe he committed suicide, maybe he was murdered. In the case of Epstein, I'm really open to all possibilities because so many crazy things happened during his life.
Law enforcement's interest in Epstein begins far from where he died, in the sunny world of Florida.
On March 15th, 2005, the Palm Beach Police Department get a frantic phone call from a woman who says her stepdaughter is a high school student in West Palm Beach. She says they've got a problem.
It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters.
She got into a fight at school. Her parents were called, and people asked questions.
And the fight broke out because one girl called her a prostitute. They get taken down to the principal's office. She dumps out their purse and asks, why is there $300 coming out of your purse? And are you dealing drugs?
She couldn't give a straight story until eventually she admitted that she had gotten the money after going to a home on Palm Beach Island where her friend had taken her.
Police bring in the 14-year-old and have her start at the beginning.
And how long ago was this? Oh my gosh, I can tell you the date, but it was about maybe, oh my gosh, a month and a half ago. Yeah, maybe more right now.
The way she wound up being involved, there was one girl, the cousin of her boyfriend, and she tells her, you want to make some money, you know, you got to massage this old guy in Palm Beach. You know, our family doesn't have money. So she said, okay.
You can tell you what anybody else that you know. Know that, she wanted me to bring my sister.
On Sunday, February 6th, the 14-year-old and her friend go over to the ritzy part of town. They arrive at a magnificent mansion.
Okay, yeah, and I got, people say I was 18.
Who is this guy? Some wealthy guy named Jeff, she said.
A 14-year-old girl is telling police about how she was pulled into a terrible new world when a friend brought her to a Palm Beach mansion.
When they got there, they were greeted by someone who told her the routine, which was, we're going to go upstairs, there's a massage room, you're going to take off your shirt, you'll take off your pants, you can leave on your bra, you can leave on your underwear, and Jeffrey will be in a minute. Well, at this point, things were changing a little bit. She didn't realize she was going to have to get undressed, but she's just been taken to a place she doesn't know, and she's stuck in this house. So she goes into a massage room. Jeffrey comes out wearing nothing but this small towel around his waist.
He was going gray. And what else? Like, the skin color is like, when you have a sunburn, but it's like when you have it for a couple of days and it's kind of turning into some, it's like a reddish.
He lays down, face up on the massage table, and he asks her to go ahead and start the massage. During the massage, he tells her that if she takes off more of her clothing, that she'll get paid more if she chooses. She said no. He said fine.
And he was like, please you should just sit on me, play your body. What do you mean by that? So, and he was on his stomach, and I was doing massage, and then like, I was sitting there on his back, but a little bit above his back. Okay.
The girl's story gets very detailed. She says the man at one point grabbed a purple vibrator and without her permission began to use it on her. Now, this is a 14-year-old girl. She didn't know how to react.
And things turned from bad to worse to awful. She then continued with the massage until at some point he began to masturbate himself, until he finally masturbated to completion. She was in shock. You've got a 14-year-old girl that didn't realize what she was getting herself into.
So that's why you did not have any kind of sex with him? Heck no. I was there and I know it's going to be like that. Yeah, so many people of the boys about 16, 17. All the guys were topless.
And then eventually he said, okay, you can go. She grabbed her clothes, put them on, and left. She was given cash by her friend after, and she just kind of stuffed it in her purse. It really was something she just, once she got into it, wanted to get out of pretty quickly. She was Jane Doe 1.
So Jane Doe number 1 files a complaint, but she does not know who he is and certainly doesn't have his last name. Police also were not sure who he was.
And the police are saying, we have enough probable cause, we really have to start looking into this guy. And she had an approximate idea of the address. They do a record search. They figure out, oh, it's this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. Let's look into him. And they start an investigation. They take every precaution. They know he's wealthy and powerful.
As authorities dig in, they learn about the financier's early days.
Jeffrey Epstein grew up near Coney Island in a gated community called Seagate. It's a Jewish-Italian neighborhood, and his parents were working class. His dad worked as a gardener and groundskeeper for the New York City Parks Department, and his mother was a homemaker, and then she took a job as like a secretary. He has a younger brother named Mark. When he was a child growing up, he's kind of like an aloof character, but he was extremely gifted. He started playing piano at the age of 5 and was a very proficient piano player. He skipped 3rd grade and then later 8th grade, and he graduated high school around the age of 16. And then he made it into a school called Cooper Union. Jeffrey Epstein studied in the School of Engineering there for 2 years. And he then also enrolls as a non-matriculating student at New York University and studies the mathematical biology of the heart and physiology.
But he never graduated from either one of them. He never got a college degree, but he knew how to get over on people.
Decades later, as Palm Beach police open a sex crimes case against Epstein, the shadowy financier earns a new nemesis.
Jeffrey's problem was Chief Michael Ryder. Honest man, honest as day is long.
As part of any investigation, Chief Ryder, at the time, he does a trash pull of Jeffrey Epstein's house to try and find some kind of corroborating evidence. When they pull Jeffrey Epstein's trash, they bring it back to the police department and essentially dump it out on a table and start to catalog what they have. They found numerous different items. They found message pads, they found notes, they found sex toys.
Among the garbage, they discover one very important piece of evidence, a purple vibrator. The same thing that Jane Doe number 1 had described. So it certainly goes a long way to corroborating what she said.
The trash pulls also reveal evidence suggesting that Epstein had help in his trafficking ring.
They find these notepads with names of young girls, messages from Jean-Luc Brunel, some of them in code that young girls were available if he wanted them.
Jean-Luc Brunel is a French modeling scout. So it says something like, I found a Russian teacher for you. She's 2 times 8, meaning she's 16 years old. The lessons are free. You can have the first one today. And that's basically, he's got a Russian underage female that he's allowing Epstein to bring into his domain.
And now they realize that this is way bigger than just one 14-year-old. Barry Krischer got involved, who was the prosecutor for Palm Beach County. Chief Ryder tells him he's got a big case coming up. He says, okay, and I'll back you all the way, and we'll take this and we'll put this guy away. And, well, the investigation takes off. And they interview girls all over Florida.
But as police expand their investigation, Epstein begins to flex his influential muscles to try to kill it.
Somehow, Epstein learns that there's an investigation and that this girl has been talking to them. So one of his minions calls a 14-year-old saying something along the lines of, those who keep their mouth shut will be rewarded, those who don't will be dealt with.
As Palm Beach police expand their sex crimes investigation into secretive financier Jeffrey Epstein, a seasoned detective takes over.
Joe Ricari is tough as nails, and he worked for a police chief who was just straight as an arrow. And he conducted this investigation in a way which anybody would be proud of.
So Joe Ricari begins interviewing numerous young girls, who then lead him to more young girls, who then lead him to more young girls. This is a huge pyramid of young girls under the age of 18. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't going after girls from wealthy areas. He was searching for young women that $200 to $300 meant a lot. Some of these young girls lived in trailer parks, had broken homes. Some of them didn't even know where their next meals were coming from. A predator hunts for the weakest.
Manipulation has been Epstein's hallmark since the early stages of his career.
It's the 1970s. He is still living in New York. Dalton is a private school on the Upper East Side that caters to very wealthy families in New York. William Barr's father, Donald Barr, was the headmaster who likely hired Epstein in the spring of '74.
He gets a job at this elite private school teaching math and physics, and Epstein doesn't even have a college degree. How weird is that? Like, who does that?
But during his time there, he wooed and dazzled the parents, and he made a connection with Ace Greenberg.
Ace Greenberg was the second most powerful man at Bear Stearns, which was an investment house in Manhattan. He and Epstein took a liking for one another.
Ace Greenberg liked hiring what he called PSDs, poor, smart, and determined people. He had him come to Bear Stearns for an interview, and he asked him, do you know what a stock and a bond is? And Epstein said, no. Are you good at mathematics? He's like, yeah, I'm very good at mathematics. And Greenberg said, okay, I want you to come in and start on Monday. He worked in stock options and also advising wealthy clients on tax strategies, making a lot more money. And he did relatively well there within 4 years, and this is kind of unheard of. In 1980, he became a limited partner. So, I mean, he dazzled people.
But in 1981, Epstein's meteoric rise hits a snag. The Securities and Exchange Commission begins an insider trading investigation of Bear Stearns employees. There is a suggestion that Epstein is involved, but he's never charged and no one knows why. Well, pretty soon he leaves the organization with his $100,000 bonus. But after that, Epstein's career hits a real dry spell.
By 1986, he can't pay his rent and he's kind of broke, and that's when he meets Stephen Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg is kind of like the Bernie Madoff of the late 1980s, and he had ran a company called Towers Financial Corporation.
Towers Financial, their primary business supposedly was buying debt fairly cheap and then trying to collect from people who owed money, and then they would recover the money and keep the difference. But that didn't work too well.
Stephen Hoffenberg is who I am. I had 9-year experience of working and knowing Jeffrey Epstein. That was his dream, to become super rich and change his entire lifestyle from being poor and humble. Jeffrey Epstein had the ability to get under the skin, to become the best friend of anybody that he targeted. his dynamic personality, his incredible gift of reading the other person's mind in a conversation and saying what the other person wanted to hear was remarkable, astonishing.
In the late 1980s, Epstein and Hoffenberg concoct a plan that could bring them the wealth they're seeking.
They start selling securities, bonds, and stocks to investors, and then selling them to more investors. And then when the original investors want their money back, they raise money by selling to yet more investors. This is known as a classic Ponzi scheme.
Epstein did a great job selling securities for the Towers companies. Fabulous job. And so Towers had some very rapid success in selling securities. And the SEC looks at any company that becomes a rapid growth company.
And the SEC figures out it's a scam, and they find evidence of criminal wrongdoing, so they prosecute Hoffenberg. Jeffrey Epstein was involved in illegal operations at Towers, and that should have resulted in a criminal prosecution of Epstein. But by the time the case gets transferred to the Southern District of New York, Epstein's name entirely vanishes from the prosecution, and nobody can really explain why.
It's shocking what occurred. They had all the evidence against Epstein. He ran the Ponzi Wall Street side of the case. Awesome. He infiltrated the company's accounting department, befriended them, and stole about $17 million of Towers' financial money. And that was all documented. They did make me financially responsible for $475 million. And they sentenced me to 20 years. They gave me Jeffrey Epstein's sentence. The unequal justice is so crazy.
So once again, he avoids criminal liability, and people are wondering, how on earth does this guy manipulate himself out of every single moment of trouble?
Nearly a decade later, Palm Beach police are also finding it difficult to bring the elusive financier to justice. Then, in September 2005, their case gets a surprising jolt.
He asked me to ask my parents to emancipate me so I could live with him.
As like a girlfriend?
Sex slave, whatever you want to call it.
During the Palm Beach police investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, authorities arrest an 18-year-old woman for possession of marijuana.
During the investigation, she lets police know she wants to bargain. She offers, in exchange for leniency, information on a local pedophile. She tells a story of having been recruited by a high school friend and visiting Jeffrey Epstein's mansion for many years.
All right. And this was a year and a half ago, correct?
Maybe 2. I'm not sure. I didn't really keep track.
How old were you when you first went over there?
If it was 2 years ago, I was 16.
Okay. When you first went to give a massage, you explained that it was just a massage?
Just a massage.
How were you brought to Jeffrey?
I was brought into the one bathroom, the massage bathroom with the steam shower, and waiting on the couch in the bathroom. And Jeffrey comes up and he's like, "Hey, I'm Jeffrey."
At first, this teenager says that she was pretty put off by the things that Jeffrey Epstein was asking her to do. But like any pedophile, there's a lot of grooming that goes on, and eventually she got kind of used to it, no matter how perverse his requests.
Who were you introduced to?
One of his slaves that he has lived with him. And when I say slaves, like one of the girls that he bought to like have sex with him.
She finally consented to some sex acts, but she made it very, very clear to him that there was to be no intercourse with Jeffrey.
He asked me to have sex with him, and I was just like, no, definitely not. I was like, I'll let you touch me, but I'm not going to do that.
And one of the things she said is that he had a particular characteristic with respect to his genitalia.
He has some sort of birth defect. on his thing. I don't know what it is. It's really weirdly shaped.
She and several other accusers mention the same detail.
And the way they described it was egg-shaped. Some of these young girls' story was very similar.
One day at Epstein's mansion, the billionaire crosses the line.
I wouldn't let him put anything inside of me, and then one day he just did.
And that's when Jeffrey inserted his penis into a vagina, which he was never supposed to do. He gave her an extra $1,000 that day.
Like, would you consider that to be rape, what he did?
When he put himself inside you without permission, forcibly.
I didn't say yes or anything. He just, like, I was standing up, and the table is about, like, my hip length. He just pushed me down.
That is a crime.
Okay.
That is a crime.
Jeffrey's gonna get me. You guys realize that, right? He's gonna figure this out, and he's gonna... I'm not safe now. You understand that, right? I'm not safe.
Detectives realize she's probably right, and they give her police protection. Her account is very important. Not only does it corroborate what other young girls and women have told them, it elevates it to a whole new level. She is describing rape of an underage teenager by a 50-year-old man. Reportedly, there is only one known on-the-record interview with Jeffrey Epstein. It was done in 2003 with the journalist David Bank. In it, Epstein shared some revealing thoughts about his life and work.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. So I'm free to follow my own personality on my own island or on my own ranch. I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do, and I'm free to explore as I see fit.
Detective Joe Carey goes to his chief, and they agree to execute a search warrant on the home. When the search warrant's executed, they go into the house and start to find materials like message pads, phone books. But what they also find is that security cameras from inside the house have been removed. Locations where there used to be computer CPU units are now gone. So clearly, Jeffrey had someone that had told him ahead of time that there was going to be a search warrant.
Epstein is not at home. Epstein is actually traveling when the search warrant was filed and executed. What I think they came to look for, they never found.
Even though there is a lack of really good evidence, they did spot one thing that was really, really significant, and that was a pink and green couch in the master bathroom. A lot of the victims had mentioned that couch, and so that piece of evidence went a long way to corroborating their accounts.
Once again, it seems Epstein somehow knew what police were doing and dodged. Still, Chief Ryder and Detective Recarey believed their case remained solid.
They wanted Epstein charged, and they felt they had enough evidence to charge him with multiple sex crimes against minors. That probable cause affidavit then went to Barry Krischer, who was in charge of the state's attorney's office back at that time. And it was then up to Barry Krischer to decide what charges to ultimately file, if any, against Jeffrey Epstein. We know now, we didn't know then, that once Jeffrey Epstein knew he was the subject of an investigation, he hired multiple high-profile attorneys. And he hired Roy Black from Miami. He hired Alan Dershowitz from Boston.
I mean, Alan Dershowitz, it doesn't get any more high-profile than that. He's got a roster of some of the most wealthy and powerful clients. O.J. Simpson, Mike Tyson, Klaus von Bülow, Donald Trump.
Epstein's legal team dispatches an army of private investigators.
They hired private investigators to follow some of the young girls, including my clients. They would interview ex-boyfriends and ask about what positions they had sex in, who they did it with, and whether or not this young girl had had an abortion. Alan Dershowitz started searching out all of these young girls' public profiles online. Anything that they posted, any comments they made, they did whatever it took to absolutely intimidate, embarrass, and try to pressure these young girls into dropping their claims. And then Dershowitz and his crew gave all of that information to the state's attorney's office in an attempt to try and discredit these young girls.
and convince Barry Krischer not to file charges, serious charges against Epstein. This pressure tactic back then, sadly, it intimidated a lot of these young girls such that they clammed up and didn't want to talk. Chief Ryder and Joe Riccari in Palm Beach were incredibly upset at how things were being handled. They felt that the ball was being dropped. They felt that Barry Krischer wasn't taking them seriously.
They weren't getting their phone calls returned, and Chief Ryder breaks rank and writes a letter to the state attorney saying, "What's going on here? You're not taking my calls. I think maybe you should even recuse yourself from the case."
Reportedly, Krischer never replies to Ryder's missive.
Barry Krischer, instead of filing charges, he decided to bring it to a grand jury.
When a prosecutor takes a case to a grand jury, everything is secret, and no one really knows what kind of case is being presented. Inside the room is the prosecutor, any witnesses he or she wants to call, and the jury. There's no defendant, there's no defense attorneys, and more importantly, there's no press.
The grand jury convenes in July 2006. Despite the alleged intimidation tactics, multiple victims are still willing to testify. Yet Krischer declines to call most of them.
Krischer only called one, and that was the 14-year-old. He had the witnesses Chief Ryder and his team had put together, who was supposed to testify. You only called one? No. Somewhere along the line, somebody got to Krischer.
Usually in a grand jury, the prosecution is trying to get the jury to indict. Not so in this case. Krischer has instructed his underlings to question one 14-year-old accuser, and things get embarrassing. She's asked about her sex life and her drinking. These are questions a cunning defense attorney would usually ask, but here it is, the prosecution smearing their own witness.
This young girl gets blindsided. She goes there and they start asking all these terrible questions.
The prosecutors were buying into the defense's story. They were buying the sexual perpetrator's story about these young girls.
One single misdemeanor charge is the final outcome of the grand jury.
The maximum sentence on that one charge? 60 days in jail.
I mean, it's just a travesty. But as far as I'm concerned, the fix was it.